We'll be joined by Harris County Clerk Teneshia Hudspeth answering all your voting questions. I'm Ernie Manous.
And I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman. We'll also talk with former FBI senior profiler and professor of forensic science Mary Ellen O'Toole, who will discuss the latest in the Nancy Guthrie abduction case.
And I'm Frank Billingsley. Plus, we'll also talk with Dr. Marianne Cusick, a colorectal surgeon at UTHealth Houston, who will provide insight on the risks associated with colorectal cancer.
And as always, we want to hear from you. So give us a call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us live on YouTube by going to houstonpublicmedia.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, by Metro, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Tributes abound today for the Reverend Jesse Jackson. His family says Jackson, who battled progressive supranuclear palsy, died this morning. Jackson is being remembered as a protege of the late Martin Luther King Jr., who would continue to be a powerful force against racism and discrimination. He was also a powerful political force, one who paved the way for other African-American leaders, such as the nation's first African-American president, Barack Obama. Jackson was a two-time presidential candidate in 1984 and again 4 years later, where he delivered a speech at the Democratic National Convention that ended with this iconic refrain.
Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Oh,
the Reverend Jesse Jackson. He was 84 years old. A second round of nuclear talks between the U.S. and Iran has ended in Geneva, both sides entrenched on key issues ahead of the negotiations, which took place amid a U.S. military buildup in the Middle East. Here's NPR's Jackie Northam.
The indirect talks were between Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and President Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner on the U.S. side and Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. Speaking afterwards, Araghchi said the three-hour talks had made good progress and were more constructive than earlier negotiations, but that more work needed to be done. The U.S. has so far not commented on the talks. President Trump is firm that Iran possessed no nuclear weapons, and so zero enrichment. Tehran insists it has the right to enrich uranium for research and civilian purposes, but has indicated it's willing to curb its nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. It's unclear if or when another round of talks is scheduled. Jackie Northam, NPR News.
Now to the Winter Olympics, which offers a full spectrum of athleticism from figure skating to curling. But as NPR's Jonathan Lambert tells us, one sport may have the best athletes, at least by one scientific measure.
For an athlete to work hard, their muscle cells need oxygen. The more oxygen they can get, the harder they can go. Scientists call the maximum amount of oxygen an athlete can use during exercise VO2 max. Scientists have measured VO2 max across all kinds of athletes, and cross-country skiers consistently rank towards the top. Stephen Seiler, an exercise physiologist at the University of Agder, explains why.
Cross-country skiing is the only sport that we're standing upright and we're using all four limbs at the same time.
That means their cardiovascular systems are working overtime to fuel all those muscles and fight gravity because they're upright. Years of this training can push a skier's VO2 max towards its upper limits. Jonathan Lambert, NPR News.
The Dow is up 53 points at last check at 49,554. It's NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Alexandra Hart. Former Harris County Judge candidate Alex Mealer is leading State Representative Briscoe Cain in the Republican primary for the new 9th Congressional District. That's according to a survey just released by the University of Houston's Hobby School of Public Affairs. Mark Jones of Rice University's Baker Institute co-authored the poll.
Briscoe Cain has a long track record as one of the most conservative members of the Texas House. That's a plus for him. Negative for him, though, is that 40% of likely voters view him unfavorably. Compare his 40% unfavorable rate to Alex Mealer's 25%.
Monday evening, President Trump posted his endorsement of Mealer in the race on his Truth Social platform. That counters Governor Greg Abbott's earlier endorsement of Cain. Harris County residents can now view their potential flood risk under a newly proposed map created by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. News 88.7's Sarah Gruno reports.
The newly proposed map places hundreds of additional households at risk of flooding. Jim Blackburn is an environmental law professor at Rice University. Speaking on Houston Matters, he says a reevaluation of rainfall rates is one of the most significant developments since the county's last flood maps were released in 2007.
The rainfall is being basically reevaluated because it's increasing. We used, I think, 13 inches in 24 hours as the 100-year storm for the 2007 maps. We're now using somewhere around 17 inches in 24 hours.
The long-awaited flood map is just a proposal and will likely go through several variations before it's approved. The county's 34 floodplain administrators will work on any revisions to the proposal. A public comment period will take place before the deadline to adopt new changes, which could be years from now. I'm Sarah Gurno, News 88.7.
The new interactive map can be viewed at houstonpublicmedia.org. And in sports, the Rockets will restart their season following the All-Star break coming up on Thursday. They'll be on the road to take on the Charlotte Hornets. I'm Alexandra Hart, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Charles Schwab, offering investors choices like full-service wealth management, advice, investing, and trading on Thinkorswim. Learn more at schwab.com. And from the Doris Duke Foundation.
Live from the University of Houston, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870. Or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
And hello, Houston.
Hello, Ernie. Hello, Frank.
Hello, Celeste. Hello, Frank.
What's up?
No, Frank didn't say hello to us, Celeste.
Hello, Houston.
It's a busy day, a lot going on in the news. We've
Happy
been
Mardi
following
Gras.
all that. It's Mardi Gras.
Yes.
Fat Tuesday.
Yes. Which is just like go and eat and drink and do whatever you want to do because tomorrow's Lent.
Right. Tomorrow's Ash Wednesday and everyone's supposed to
Go get wild.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Strap it in. Pull it back
This is the bachelor
together.
party today.
Oh, is that how you look at it? The spring's bachelor party is today. But also, while we are enjoying everything that today brings, how's the weather for it?
Oh, perfect. It's warm today. Temperatures will be in the upper 70s, around 80. And we have that until a cold front, a weak cold front. Nothing like we just saw. A weak cold front comes in Friday into Saturday. So by Sunday, we're back to sunny and 68. But the weekend could start off a little damp, 30%.
Give me how cold? On the weekend.
Highs of 68, and I think probably Saturday morning down to around 50.
Oh, that's not
and
bad
then
at all.
Monday morning down to around 46.
Okay.
So, no, the terrible cold is, I think, gone.
Good, because I want to clean out my garage this weekend.
Oh,
and so I want it to be good weather.
A weekend?
Yeah, well.
If you want to start cleaning out your garage.
Let's be honest. It's never going to happen. It's a plan that never happens.
But you know what else is happening today?
I do know.
Early voting.
It has begun, and that starts off our headlines even.
It sure does. Voting for the 2026 primary election starts today in Texas. Republican and Democratic voters will choose the candidates they want representing their party on the ballot in November's general election. Election day is March 3rd, with early voting running now through February 27th. In each race, a candidate must win more than 50% of the vote to avoid a runoff. If no one reaches that majority, the top two candidates will face off in a runoff election on May 26th. Joining us to tell us more and answer all of your early voting questions, Harris County Clerk Teneshia Hudspeth. Welcome.
Hello. How are you all?
Good.
We're good. It's very funny because we talk about voting all the time here. So we brought it up yesterday and mentioned it. And Frank all of a sudden had some questions. We were like, we should know the answers to this because I'm sure we've heard it before. But Frank, you were asking about ID.
Well, we all get this voter registration card, but that alone's not going to get you into the polls to vote, right?
That's correct.
So why do
That's correct.
Why do we have it? Why do we have it?
Well, it's just your official record to identify that you are a registered voter and to inform you what districts you are in. And as you all know, there was two special sessions last legislative session, and 47% of Harris County voters are now in new districts. But besides that, every 4 years you get that new voter registration card, especially if redistricting is at place. So it really, at some point in elections, it did serve as a qualifying ID for voting. And the legislature changed that to IDs that include a photo. But some folks still kind of carry it around as their badge of honor, and they keep it in their wallets. If you're like me, I have it in my wallet to verify that I'm a registered voter. But you don't necessarily need to have that with you when you go vote. Those days are gone.
So the flip side of that is, what do you need with you to vote?
Yeah. So for a pretty smooth process, it's those 7 top qualifying IDs. So one is a driver's license. One is just a regular Texas ID card. There's also a Texas election ID card that the DPS will issue for free. Texas handgun license, U.S. passport, U.S. citizenship certificate. And I know I'm missing one here, but there are 7 total. This is all at harrisvotes.com, where you can provide one of those IDs. Now, if for some reason you get to a vote center, right, and you realize you left your ID clear across town or something of that nature, you can ask for a RID form, a reasonable impediment form, or provisional, but you still have to cure that ballot after the fact to make sure that the ballot is counted. So it's just easier to have one of those 7 qualifying IDs.
What do you mean by
And
cure
again,
that ballot?
that voter certificate is one of those. If you're filling out a RID or another documentation to say, hey, I'm a registered voter, but we can also look you up and identify, right? When you come in, you're being identified that you're a registered voter.
Let me ask you about moving. Let's say you've moved. Your passport has your address on Avenue A, and your voter registration, you're on Avenue B, and your new driver's license you got has you on Avenue C. So does that matter when you take that ID that's, let's say it's a very common name, let's say your name is John Smith. Does it matter when you go down as John Smith with these 3 different kind of IDs?
The address is not what matters as much. It's more so the photo and an actual ID that verifies I am who I say I am.
Okay.
If you're registered at Avenue A and your ID says Avenue B, one of the first things, and you all know this as voters, once you qualify, is the election worker will ask, are you still at 1001 Avenue B? And the voter at that time can say, well, no, I'm not. And they can fill out a form which is called a statement of residence. And they can fill out their updated address. Now, as of that day, they'll still have to vote according to Avenue A. And then once they fill out that statement of residence document, it's updated, which will reflect Avenue B or C later on. So that is a common factor with voters in the state of Texas or just across the nation, not necessarily updating all your new information, which is why we really promote the deadline to register to vote, but also information if you've moved. But it is not a deciding factor when it comes to voting, right? Yeah. They will ask you, are you still at this address to update it? And then again, if you're like, well, I'm at this address and I really want to vote for these members. Well, if it wasn't updated in the voter registration system, you'll still have to vote according to where you're registered as of that time.
I want to jump back just for 1 second for something really quick. You said they still have to cure that ballot. What do you mean by that?
That's if you vote a provisional, right? And I have no identification at all, right? I don't have one of the 7 qualifying IDs. I don't have a voter registration card or any documentation. What happens is you got a provisional, really it's an affidavit. It doesn't become a counted ballot until after the fact. And if you fill out a provisional during early voting or election day, you have a certain amount of days to, by law, it's called cure the ballot, meaning bring it into the voter registrar's office to identify that, hey, I am who I say I am, and to make sure that that provisional ballot is counted. So that's a little bit more in the weeds, but you do have those provisional voters from time to time that have nothing at all on them, but they still want to cast their ballot.
Now, Teneshia, we did receive a YouTube question. So Doris Murdoch would like to know. She says, I was in District 18, parentheses, Houston, but my voter card says I'm in District 7. My sample ballot has all the districts. I'm confused. Can you clarify that for us?
Right. So what she is looking at is the whole sample ballot for the county. So when you go to harrisvotes.com and you go to sample ballot, to the very left side, gives you the sample ballot for the Democratic and Republican Party, and it just gives you the general sample ballot for everyone in the county for every race. But if she goes over slightly to the right, where it says there, specific sample ballot, you type in your name and address, and she'll be able to pull her actual sample ballot according to where she's registered. Some people stop over there to the left where it's the general sample ballot that shows all the possible races in this election. But right there in the middle on that same page shows where you can put in your name and information and pull your specific sample ballot. So no worries, you won't have to go into the voting booth and try to make a selection in all those races.
Yes.
You do have your specific sample ballot. You just need to move over to the right side of that page.
So do you have to decide at the polls whether you're going to vote Democrat or Republican?
Yes, you do. That is what primary elections are all about. It's essentially the way the two main political parties in the state of Texas and on the county level select who their nominees will be in November. And as you can see, if you've looked at your sample ballot, and I know you guys have, on both sides of the aisle, on the Democrat and Republican side, in terms of ballots, there are many contested races from the top of the ballot, from the governor's race all the way down to some of the local races here in Harris County. So there'll likely be a runoff in late May, and then the final list of nominees will go on to the November ballot. So the primary election is the only election where voters have to choose to vote either Democratic or Republican for that ballot. And it's really important, just as all other elections are. Then you get to November, you can vote across party lines and make your choices there. So don't, I said this morning earlier, the election workers are not trying to figure out necessarily what parties personally you're voting for or what candidates. It is just how primary elections work.
And once you can pick either party when you get to the polls. And the next primary, you can pick a different party. You're not beholden to one party.
Well, Texas has open primaries. So if you vote in this primary, Democrat or Republican, if there's a runoff, you have to vote in the same runoff, right. Democrat or Republican, right? You can't change parties. But the next primary season, which would be 2028, you can choose to vote in a different primary. So you don't have to register by party in the state of Texas.
So if I vote,
so that is accurate.
So if I vote Democrat in the March 3rd primary, and there's a runoff in the Republican race, can I still go and vote in the Republican runoff race?
You cannot. If you choose Democratic in the primary and the runoff, you have to choose the Democratic Party in that runoff.
What if I change my mind?
Primary, you can't cross you can't cross party lines. That's how Texas primaries work. It's all about Texas election code and law. But obviously, the nominees will go into November, and then you can choose whichever party line you want. And by the time November comes, there'll be some independents, Green Party, Libertarian. There'll be other factors on the November ballot. So unfortunately, you can't have it your way in the primary election.
So in November, though, you can vote for this guy, a Democrat, this guy, a Republican, this woman, a Democrat, this woman. You can vote any way you want.
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, that's the difference in primary elections.
Okay, we had a question come in from YouTube. Would I be correct in thinking that there is not likely to be a runoff between James Talarico and Jasmine Crockett? Just one of them has to get 51% of the votes, right?
Well, one of those candidates have to get 50% plus one of the votes. So that is accurate. But you know what? We'll have to wait and see what voters decide. But there will not be a runoff. It will be one person to win. And that nomination on that side, obviously there are candidates on the Republican side, and we'll go on to the November ballot.
Okay.
But there are some races that have 3, 4, maybe even 8 candidates in a race. So those will definitely go into runoffs.
We have a Doris from YouTube says, I was in District 18, but my voter card says I'm in District 7.
We asked that question already.
We did?
Yeah, we asked it.
Let me jump in on something else here then, too. So, and we do this every time, but I always want people to know. In Harris County, you can vote anywhere. We were talking precincts. Frank was just going to ask another question about precincts. But it doesn't matter because once you give your ID, they generate the correct ballot for where you live. So it doesn't matter where you go.
That's right. We've been voting countywide here in Harris County since 2019. So that means essentially you can go to any vote center during early voting and election day. Our ballots are pre-programmed for the entire county. So it doesn't matter where you go, you're still going to get your specific sample ballot according to where you're registered. We do a lot of work and testing to make sure that happens. But again, I think some people voted precinct level for so very long, they're kind of stuck there. It doesn't matter the location that you go to. What will matter is what's on your voter registration. That's what determines what's on your ballot.
Let's talk about locations a little bit. So in the early voting, you have a slew of locations. Do those mirror what we find on Election Day? Does Election Day have more voting locations? How do people find out what's where?
Yes, so for early voting, there's 60 early voting locations that will also serve as Election Day locations. So all of our early voting sites continue to be voting locations on Election Day. On Election Day, the amount of locations always increase, right? That's the final day of voting across the county. And so obviously we have a full spread of Election Day locations that would be included with the 60. So hundreds of Election Day locations.
So people need to get out there starting today. Advice I'm sure you would give them is vote early because the lines are a lot shorter. You can get through it pretty easily.
Yeah, definitely vote early. Look, we have between today and February 27th, it includes a Saturday and Sunday for our weekend folks. And look, Houston's unpredictable. The weather, the traffic, you never know. And I know there's some traditional Election Day voters, which is fine. But again, we encourage you to vote early, get it done, get it out of the way. On Election Day, the concept, and hopefully you all have me back before Election Day where we can talk about how different it will be on Election Day. It will not be in a joint fashion that voters experience during early voting. And so we'll prep those Election Day voters for what to expect on Election Day.
Well, and let me say, I don't know what the weather's going to be on Election Day, but I can tell you it's going to be really nice this week. So I think that I would take advantage of early voting simply because the weather right now is pretty much a guarantee. So there you go.
For all things voting, please go to harrisvotes.com or you can call our hotline 713-755-6965. And for those who choose and qualify to vote by mail, Friday, February 20th is the deadline to apply for that ballot by mail. I really wanted to get that one in.
Okay. Really quickly, if you go to the polls and you feel uncomfortable, you feel there are poll watchers that are watching you, what are they allowed to do and not do? And where should people feel comfortable?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So by Texas law, it prescribes that there can be poll watchers that can poll watch on behalf of a candidate, a political party, or a measure on the ballot. So as long as they've done the state training, they have their certificate, no one can just walk into a poll and just start watching and saying, hey, I'm here to be a poll watcher. You actually have to do an online training, provide a certificate to the election worker, and sign in with them so that they can accept. It's actually the election judge, accept your poll watcher guide. They can view and observe what the election workers are doing, what's happening in the vote center. If an election worker is providing assistance to a voter, they can walk over and view. They cannot look at your selections of your ballot per se. But again, poll watchers are a very vital part of the process. What they cannot do is ask you questions, have conversations. Well, why are you voting for this person? And begin to harass you. That is where election judges and alternate judges come into play, and they do have the authority to remove that person if they become cantankerous or are not following the law.
And all those campaign signs, who's going to get rid of them after the election?
That I'm proudly say that's not the county clerk's job. That is the campaign's job.
I did have a question.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I did have a question regarding translators. If they are available, if there are ballots in other languages, how is that process moved during elections?
Yeah, so in Harris County, we have 4 languages: English, Spanish, Chinese, and Vietnamese, which is required by population. Could that grow after the next census? Absolutely. So when you go in to vote, you have those 4 languages on the ballot. Ballot by mail, you can request it. Everything you see is translated in those 4 languages. If someone needs further assistance in a language that is not provided or prescribed by law, for us, they can bring a family member or an assistant in to translate for them. We also have translator iPads at every early voting center, and it provides thousands more languages. And it's a simple call into the iPad and they can provide the language. So there are many different things we can do. I think most voters will have a family member or someone that they trust to come in and guide them through that ballot. And then we also have translators at every vote center in the Spanish, Vietnamese, and Chinese language as well to support voters if they need it there in person.
Harris County Clerk Teneshia Hudspeth, thank you so much for joining us on Hello Houston.
Thank you very much.
Well, go vote, everyone.
Go
Give
vote.
Election workers some work to do.
Coming up on Hello Houston, we'll talk with Mary Ellen O'Toole, former FBI senior profiler. and professor of forensic science about the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. This is News 88.7. Stay with us.
Meet Tio Choco. We just took his keys for the day and gave him a Ride Metro fare card. This is his story. Visit ridemetro.org/Choco to find out where is Choco.
Blu-ray and VHS a fad, or will they stay in style? That's next time on Marketplace.
You can listen to Marketplace. It's coming up tonight at 6:30.
On Fresh Air, you'll hear revelations from well-known actors, like Zach Galifianakis on the story behind his last name.
It's actually shortened, Terry. My real last name is Galifianakisberg. That's an exclusive for your show.
Fresh Air, bringing you some of the biggest names in American culture and some of the most difficult to pronounce. Join us.
Fresh Air, weekdays at 8 p.m. on News 88.7.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Texas Mutual Insurance Company, a workers' compensation provider committed to helping Texas communities and emphasizing safety. More at texasmutual.com/TexansGetIt.
Support comes from the Clarion at Brazosport College, featuring the vocal ensemble Kitka on February 27th at 7:30 p.m. Tickets and more information at brazosport.edu/Clarion.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from CertaPro Painters, offering residential and commercial painting services, from color consultations to full project management. Estimates and more at CertaPro.com. Support for Houston Public Media comes from Metro, introducing the Ride Metro Fare Card. The Ride Metro fare system replaces the Metro Q Fare Card for bus and rail fares. Details at ridemetro.org/fare system.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now back to Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
The search for Nancy Guthrie, mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie, is extended into its third week, and many questions about her disappearance remain unanswered. Authorities are still analyzing evidence in the case, and the Guthrie family continues to make pleas to her kidnappers for her safe return. To discuss the latest in the Nancy Guthrie abduction case, what we can learn from watching situations like this unfold, and how profilers aid in the search for missing persons and other criminal activity, we welcome back to the program Mary Ellen O'Toole, a former FBI senior profiler and professor of forensic science at George Mason University. Dr. O'Toole was also the lead researcher and author of the FBI's seminal work in school violence, The School Shooter, A Threat Assessment Perspective. Mary Ellen, welcome back to the program.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Toole, when someone vanishes under suspicious circumstances, what immediately tells investigators this may not be a voluntary disappearance when we're looking and trying to understand abduction and missing person cases?
So there are three things investigators will look at. They'll look at the physical health of the person to see if there may have been some mental health issues that resulted in them wandering off. Number two, they will be looking at whether or not there's any evidence of a crime scene inside the residence or wherever it was they were taken from. And then the third thing that we do and spend an awful lot of time on is we develop a victimology of the individual, which means it's a complete research look at the victim to understand who they are and why or why not they should become the victim of a violent crime like kidnapping.
You know, the question that keeps popping into my head is about the coverage we're seeing of this particular case. And I heard a couple pundits, analysts talking about it. And what they were saying, one was saying they should be saying what they have because you want to let the possible abductors know that, oh my God, we're on to something so that possibly they could make a mix-up or a screw-up and do something in a panic which would help reveal them. The other side was saying we shouldn't be saying what we have because we're giving away the leads in the direction we're going. What school of thought do you fall into in this, and what's the pros and cons of both of these?
I think when you give out too much information, you always have to keep in mind you are talking to the offender or the offenders. And so if you don't want them to have specific information, then you don't put it out there. And if there is the risk of evidence being destroyed or somebody being hurt, or the offenders even leaving the area, then you use great caution in putting it out there if it's going to negatively impact the case. The flip side of that is if you are really in need of the public's help on a case, like for example, yesterday, Savannah made a very compelling plea to individuals, including the kidnapper, but individuals that might know something about the case. And that can be extremely effective because somebody who is close to this person, and there likely are people close to him, they don't feel the same way that he feels. So we're talking two different personalities, the kidnapper and people close to the kidnapper. People close to the kidnapper can be compelled and feel that sense of empathy for the family and for Nancy, and want to call into the police and say, this is very difficult for me, but I think I know who's responsible. So that kind of a response requires putting out information to the general public. So it's not one central philosophy. It really does depend on what's going on in the case and what the information and what the evidence is you're putting out there.
I guess my follow-up on that, though, is should we be dissecting that video or the videos that come out? And is that revealing too much to the possible assailants in this case, saying, oh, the way Savannah is talking, the way she's saying it, she's trying to work on this reaction and this nerve and to get the... Are we showing too much, and is that stopping the process from working in why she's releasing the videos the way she is?
Well, there's always a downside, and you can't prevent that. So there will be people that will look at that compelling message that she had and feel that they disagreed with it or that it shouldn't be out there. But I can just tell you from my experience working kidnapping cases that having that type of compelling message can, in fact, influence someone to come forward. But again, whatever steps, whatever efforts law enforcement makes, we are going to be criticized, and we know that. And there always is a downside to releasing too much or not releasing enough.
When we're looking at cases like this, why are the first 24 to 48 hours so critical in these cases?
They're so critical because that's the time during which I think law enforcement has the best advantage. And it's also during the time, if something is going to happen to the victim, it frequently happens within that first 24 hours. And it's also during that 24 hours that law enforcement is able to probably collect the most compelling physical evidence at a scene. Not always. I mean, we can collect evidence days, weeks, months, even years afterwards. But in that first period of time, we have safety of the victim, and then we have to collect the evidence so we can get it into the laboratory and get it processed.
I haven't heard much about a reward. It seems like one today was offered up $100,000 by an attorney out of state. But, you know, when Lady Gaga's dogs went missing, she offered $500,000. They found those dogs in a day. I mean, rewards work. How come they haven't offered $1 million reward on this? Or has the FBI said, don't do that yet?
I'm not sure why they haven't made that reward higher than what it is right now. And I agree with you that rewards can work. And maybe at some point they will increase that. But I think right now, at least in my experience with cases, the rewards over the years have not been that high, and that may have influenced people not to come forward. So there's one philosophy that we had, which may not be the best all the time, which is that most people do want to do the right thing, and most people actually do want to help. And so we have been, over the years, fairly fortunate having people with information call in and provide that information to law enforcement.
You know, Dr. O'Toole, in general, I would like to know, how do investigators manage such intense public pressure without actually compromising a case like this? And then specifically looking at this case, the FBI is assisting local authorities. When do local authorities actually hand over a case to the FBI to take over, and how does that kind of interaction work?
Well, the first part of your question is, if I understood it correctly, is how do investigators deal with the pressure on the case that is being so closely scrutinized? And you have people that are on camera, investigators who are being filmed, who are actually out, for example, searching in the desert. And it can be fairly stressful, but I think most people that are involved in this case are incredibly committed to a successful outcome. The sense, the feeling in a command center when you're working a case like this is pretty powerful. And people come in to work after a few hours of sleep at night, if that, and they are really motivated to do a great job and to make a difference. And so that's what keeps people going on something like this, because they want a resolution and they want it to be a good resolution. I'm sorry, what was your other question?
And my next question was how the FBI, the interaction and collaboration between the FBI and local authorities, when is a case like this handed over to the FBI, or why hasn't it been handed over?
I can just tell you in most cases, it's not really a matter of handing something over. It's a matter of working together in a partnership. When it becomes critical to use your phrase, hand the case over, is when the case has been resolved, ending up in an arrest. Then it has to be determined, will it be prosecuted on the state level or on the federal level? So at this point, again, going back to the command center and how the leaders in both the Sheriff's Department and the FBI are working, is that if you were to walk into that command center right now, unless they were wearing a jacket, you really would not know who's the FBI agent and who's with the Sheriff's Department. We come in, we work together, that's our job, we do it every day, and we're not coming in saying, okay, the FBI is here, we'll take over from here. That doesn't happen. That does happen in movies. It used to happen years ago, but it really doesn't happen now. So there is a partnership, because we've learned the hard way. If you don't work and bring your resources together in a common goal, you're never going to solve a case. And that, again, over my 28 years as an FBI agent, I've seen that over and over again. And that's what's happening right here.
I guess what troubles me in this particular case, with so much of what troubles me about it, and of course, as we've stated, we don't necessarily in the public arena know everything that they know in the law enforcement end of it. But it seems as though since the actual abduction, there has been no credible signs of life. There has been no credible, in some ways, ransom notices. There's been a lot of questions about who's getting these ransom notes and what they say and what the deal is. How do you proceed in a situation where really it seems as though you don't know what players are legitimate, what's real here, if there is even something to still be found? I don't even want to say the way I'm going with that question, but I'll just let you take it from there.
I think I understand where you're going with that. The investigators have to continue, and they do. You don't have to tell them this. They will continue in an effort to resolve this case and to find Nancy alive and to bring her back. Do they understand that that may not be the end result? They do. They get that. They don't live in a world of unreality. But what they do have are hundreds of leads that are coming in. Those are prioritized, and those leads are being followed. You have another group of agents that's working on the forensic evidence. You have another group of agents and sheriff's detectives that are working on the technology. So everybody is working together to be able to resolve this case. And everybody is thinking, today may be the day. But we understand that the outcome may not be what we want it to be, but that doesn't stop the investigators from continuing on with the investigation. And I can promise you that there are leads being covered. There are interviews that are being done right now as we speak. More evidence is being collected that creates additional work and additional efforts on the part of investigators. So they're going to be busy for a long time.
So I know it's not the responsibility of law enforcement, but do they actually provide anyone like a psychiatrist or a therapist for the family going through this? or does the family just have to come up with friends and the preacher? I mean, do they have any role in that?
I'm not sure what role that the FBI provides with that. We attempt to give the families as much support as we can. But if the family decided they wanted to reach out to a religious person, if they wanted to reach out for a minister or a priest or someone else, they certainly can do that. But we do try to provide as much support as we can. And part of that support is to answer as many questions as we can, to have somebody there with them, to make sure that we're able to respond to them and able to respond to their concerns. But I've had it where families have reached out for mental health support, and we certainly encourage that if that is something that they think would be helpful to them.
You know, Dr. O'Toole, from your experience, when families make public pleas, can that actually influence an offender's behavior? And what we're seeing is the Guthrie family is taking almost a strategy of really pleading in a, I don't know if the word is kind way, but saying, you know, we believe that there is still good out there. You know, we just want our mom back. Have you seen that type of strategy or plea work?
Well, yes, I have, but it's important that in making a plea like this, and I believe that they did know this because I think it was a very compelling plea, you are not appealing to the kidnapper. That is not going to move the kidnapper. When you look at the crime of kidnapping and you look at the behaviors that were involved from what we could see on the video and the amount of planning that went into this kidnapper, we call them the offender. This offender knew what they were doing and had some amount of planning ahead of time. Kidnapping is one of the most violent crimes that you can commit. And oftentimes, if not most of the time, when we see a kidnapping, it is a very cold-blooded crime that's committed by someone who lacks empathy for the victim. Mm. So the appeal yesterday would very likely not appeal to that person at all. However, that person doesn't live in a vacuum. That person probably has family, neighbors, relatives who suspect or who know specifically that he's likely involved in this kidnapping. That's who you're appealing to. They don't have the same personality traits as he does. So they will, at least some of them, one of them, all you need is one, will feel terrible about what's happening, and they will feel terrible about what Savannah's family is going through. And that's who you appeal to, so that they will be able to get the strength to step over those family bonds and attachments and contact law enforcement and say, I think somebody that I live with, somebody I'm related to, somebody that I'm friends with is responsible for this case. And yes, we've had that happen in other cases. So that's where the appeal is. It's not to the kidnapper themselves.
And that's where the $1 million reward comes in. Right?
Well, you're right about that.
Yeah.
Let me ask about evidence, and a lot has been made about the backpack, and this is where I can't even get my mind around it. You have a low-cost, mass-produced backpack that is sold, and as we understand it, in Walmart stores across the country. I don't know how that can lead you to someone because of the sheer volume, the length of time these have been available. How does the FBI dig into this and make that a piece of evidence that can actually lead to something?
Well, they may, at the end of the day, end up with nothing of value from it. And I would agree with you. However, we can't not do something about that. Mm-hmm. And I've seen in other cases where they can go to a store, a Walmart there in Tucson, and they can attempt to find out through all the cameras that Walmart is notorious for having, to see if they can go back in time and identify, for example, people that have purchased that. But more importantly, they'll go back and see, did someone purchase all of those things in one day? And they will send leads out to other field offices in the surrounding area and surrounding states to do the same thing. Now, it is grueling, time-consuming work. But if they're able to identify someone on camera, depending on when those items were purchased, that was standing in line and buying them, that could be a wealth of information. And the thing that to me, if I were working the case, would be important is how likely is that this person bought those items 6 months ago, 2 weeks ago, or a year ago. So they will go back in sections of time in order to attempt to identify someone that is buying that backpack, or better yet, all those things at the same time. If, on the other hand, this individual bought them online, then that presents a whole nother set of challenges.
Yeah. Well, and the gloves seem to be, at least they're looking for DNA in one of the gloves. Maybe they'll find something there. Maybe.
I didn't want to cut you off. You were going to answer Frank's comment.
No, the gloves are possibly going to be a very valuable piece of physical evidence, depending on what they find after they release the results of the DNA analysis. And again, they're not naive enough to think that that is going to be the single resolution to the case. We know they were found 2 miles away. We know that it's likely they were common gloves, so many people might have purchased them. And we know that gloves fall out of people's pockets all the time. But when you find a glove that looks similar 2 miles from the home, you don't really have a choice. You can look at it and say, yeah, that probably isn't the guy.
Well, gloves aren't a big staple in Tucson, Arizona. It doesn't get that cold.
Right, and gloves like that in particular. So it was imperative that they pick up those gloves and they process them, send them to the lab, and do the DNA analysis on it, just to be on the safe side. Yeah.
Just really quickly, when talking about this evidence, from your experience and your knowledge of the case, do offenders like this purchase items to do these crimes, or is it things they have? Would this person have more likely bought that backpack for this moment, or just taken a backpack they had to commit this?
He could do either, but in connection with all the other items, the jacket and the gloves and the face mask, it looks to me like he bought them specifically for this kidnapping.
Dr. Mary Ellen O'Toole is a former FBI senior profiler and professor of forensic science. Mary Ellen, thank you so much for joining us today on Hello Houston.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Coming up, a discussion on colorectal cancer awareness following the death of actor James Van Der Beek. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
Meet Damola, songwriter, world-class violinist, and award-winning multi-genre artist. We just took his keys for the day and gave him a Ride Metro fare card. Visit ridemetro.org/Damola to learn more about his ride.
And the changing global order. Next time on 1A.
You can catch 1A coming up today at 2 p.m.
What I've always tried to do in my music is just tell the truth.
Who am I really? Get into the minds of some of the world's most creative people.
Totally exploring their ideas.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you everything.
The Arts Hour brings you the finest arts and culture conversation from across the BBC and beyond.
It's the variety. That's the world that interests me.
The Arts Hour from the BBC.
Fridays at 10 p.m. and Saturdays at 11 p.m. on News 88.7. Support comes from the Houston Symphony, presenting Tchaikovsky's Romeo and Juliet, Sofia Gubadulina in Tempest Praesens, and Scriabin's Poem of Ecstasy at Jones Hall this weekend, February 20th through 22nd. Tickets at houstonsymphony.org.
Tonight on Houston Public Media TV8, the new 4-part series Black and Jewish America traces the rich, complex relationship that was drawn together by racism and anti-Semitism. Tonight at 8 on TV8.
Support comes from Visit Galveston, presenting Mardi Gras Galveston, February 6th through 17th, featuring parades, live music, and events across the island on the Texas Gulf Coast. More information at visitgalveston.com.
Support comes from Port Houston, delivering access to international markets for everything made and grown in Texas. Port Houston operates the public port terminals and advocates for Houston's port and ship channel, all for the benefit of those who live and work in the region.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now back to Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
The passing of Dawson's Creek actor James Van Der Beek last week from colorectal cancer has put a national spotlight on the dangers of this deadly disease, which, according to the American Cancer Society, excluding skin cancers, is the third most common cancer diagnosed in both men and women in the United States, with rates continuing to increase among people younger than the age of 50. To tell us more about colorectal cancer, we're joined by Dr. Marianne Cusick, a colorectal surgeon at UTHealth Houston. Dr. Cusick, welcome to Hello Houston. On a personal, on a personal note, I've had several friends that have died of colorectal cancer, and they were all in their 50s. And it's really something we need to monitor and get a hold of it before it becomes deadly. So how does a person do that?
My number one recommendation is to pay attention. Pay attention to your body, pay attention to changes, and stay up to date with your screenings of all different kinds. Those are really there, and the guidelines are there to really prevent cancers and early detection, which we know that early detection can result in easier cure and lifelong cure, hopefully. So paying attention to things that we don't really like to talk about, right? Yeah. Like paying attention to what comes out of your body, paying attention to bowel movements, blood in the stool, abdominal pain, or changes in your general health.
But Dr. Cusick, I'm curious what the latest statistics are actually showing us about how much colorectal cancer rates have increased in people under 50. I personally know a very close friend who passed away last year from colorectal, and he was 43, I believe. And so what I'd like to know as well, taking that data, how unusual is it? And the trend comparing from historical data?
I'd love to tell you some really positive news, and we're making great benefit on this, but we're not gaining ground. What we know is over the last 30 years, for those from 30 to 50, we're actually seeing double the number of cases in that younger population. This doubling is exactly what caused the National Task Force to pay attention and decrease the screening age for colorectal cancer. For years and years, it was age 50. Nobody needed a colonoscopy or colon cancer screening till age 50. And several years ago now, that dropped to age 45. Mm-hmm. And so now colonoscopy and colon cancer screening starts at age 45. So now 1 in 10 cases of colorectal cancer, which is typically thought of as kind of an older person's disease and illness, is being seen in those under 50.
What, any guess as to why? Is it our diet in America?
I think it's part of that. I think it's, if there was one specific thing, I think our scientists and our researchers would have been able to pin it down at this point, because the rates are climbing so quickly. So I think it's going to be complex. It's going to be a factor of diet, a factor of environment. One thing that we're not necessarily seeing a factor in these young colorectal cancers is family history. So there's no safety in saying, oh, my family doesn't have colorectal cancer in it. That's not necessarily something to feel safe with, that your family doesn't have colorectal cancer. You're still at risk. Now, if your family does have colorectal cancer, or you have other intestinal related inflammatory bowel disease conditions or other cancer history, you're at an even higher risk of colorectal cancer, especially in those younger folks.
Talking about just the lifestyle aspect of it and family history, something that's I'm seeing a lot more regularly, and it just might be my algorithm, is understanding microbiome. Does that have any connection to that? And I think that a lot of young people, we are recognizing this between the ages of 35 and 40. We're seeing it in our friends, and we're trying to understand microplastics, microbiome. How much of those factors play into these type things?
Well, the microbiome, we're learning more and more, and we're learning, even at certain bacteria populations within the colon can actually clue us in to maybe there is cancers there, or maybe inflammatory bowel conditions. So the environment in the colon is established so that these either we don't know if it's the inflammatory conditions in the intestines or the environment in the bowel can cause a cancer, or does the environment in the bowel change because of the cancer? So those are still, relationships that we're figuring out, but without a doubt, I do feel that it plays an impact.
There are some cancers that move more quickly than others. There is fear in a population that they don't want to hear that word said by a doctor to them. Your recommendation to people, is it by the time you know that somebody has it or you're feeling those symptoms before a doctor has identified it, are you pretty far down the line? Is this something that should be being checked when you have no signs at all for a better outcome?
So as of right now, if you are completely asymptomatic, you are doing great, and there's no conditions or no changes in your health, then age 45 is when you should have that colonoscopy. But if there are symptoms, and this is where I say pay attention, especially to those that aren't quite in the screening guideline. So blood in the stool, blood on the toilet paper, abdominal pain, consistent and gradual changes in bowel movements, either towards constipation, towards diarrhea, patients that are diagnosed with anemia for kind of an unknown cause. Those are no longer asymptomatic patients. Those are patients that need colonoscopies or healthcare check-ins before the screening guidelines, or maybe between they were due for their colonoscopy. If you have these changes, they need to get evaluated because they can lead to an earlier detection. But typically, you're absolutely right that once you start seeing these things, it could lead to a later stage of diagnosis.
When we're looking at prevention, Dr. Cusick, what do you think are some of the biggest barriers to screening for people in younger age groups?
Well, I think we've already kind of mentioned it. A lot is fear, right? People are fearful of what may be found. And I always tell patients that have fear, that don't really want to have their colonoscopy, we're not changing anything. We're just kind of find it and then be able to treat it. The condition's already there, or there's concern there. So hopefully with an early detection, early intervention, and more likelihood of cure. There's also I live in a world of a gastrointestinal surgeon where we live in a space where we have a lot of awkward conversations about a lot of things that shouldn't be talked about at the dinner table and things like that. But there's this fear of having these discussions with your doctors, and making friends and family aware that you are having a problem, or there is something going on that wasn't happening before. So it's kind of a little bit of stigma related to the GI tract and stool and pain and bleeding and things that often patients don't want to mention to their loved ones or to even their own physicians.
Quick question. Is this more in men or women, or either?
The rates are rising in both. And so we're not seeing really discrepancy in those younger populations. So the rates are rising for those young people in both the men and women.
So how effective are non-invasive screening options? We've heard I'm going to say it on air, the poop in the box, that whole thing, like the stool or blood test, compared to an actual colonoscopy.
So going back a little bit to patients that may have fear, the Cologuard test or the poop in the box test, they're out there and they are better than nothing. The gold standard or the recommended test that I think is best is a colonoscopy, but there are several different types of stool-based tests. There's ones where you can send off and have lots of DNA testing, and those are the most sensitive, so they're the most likely to find a problem. And if they're totally normal, you don't have to do them for 3 years. Mm-hmm. There's other tests that need to be done annually because they're not quite as sensitive. So you're checking those annually, and a lot of physicians and a lot of screening protocols will recommend those. Those are called the FIT or the immunoassay tests. Yep. But a colonoscopy is still the gold standard. I always mention that it's not only about identifying the cancer or identifying a bad problem like a cancer. We can actually identify polyps where we can actually remove those during the time of the colonoscopy to prevent development of the cancers in the future. So typically it's thought of that we do colon screenings to remove those polyps so that they don't develop into larger problems later.
Dr. Marianne Cusick, thank you so much for joining us today. Dr. Cusick is a colorectal surgeon at UTHealth. Coming up, we'll continue discussing today's top headlines.
This is your NPR station, KUHF, Houston News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston. It's 12 o'clock.
Just ahead on this hour of Hello Houston, civil rights leader, minister, and politician, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, passed away this morning at the age of 84. We'll discuss the legacy of this influential civil rights leader and more of today's top headlines. I'm Frank Billingsley.
And I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman. We'll also talk with the Honorable Vanessa Gilmore, judge of the U.S. District Court, about her incredible career and some of today's legal issues.
And I'm Ernie Manous. Plus, on this Fat Tuesday, Docs Houston Artistic Director Graeme Francis and vocalist Nicoya Baker will tell us all about the musical traditions of Mardi Gras.
And we want to hear from you. Give us a call or text at 713-440-8870 or email us, talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us live on YouTube by going to houstonpublicmedia.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, by Metro, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The Reverend Jesse Jackson, a pivotal voice for African Americans and the poor, has died, according to a statement from Jackson's family and the organization that he founded, the Rainbow Push Coalition. He was 84 years old. NPR's Cheryl Corley reports Jackson lived a life that bridged civil rights activism and politics.
I am somebody.
Throughout his life, Jesse Jackson inspired and encouraged millions with his trademark chant, I am somebody. He made a mark as a young aide to civil rights icon Martin Luther King Jr. He'd go on to push for a greater share of economic and political power for blacks and others with his Rainbow Push Coalition. Jackson ran for president in 1984 and in 1988. On his 75th birthday, Jackson took note of his long career.
I endured as a long-distance runner. I served, and I never surrendered my spirit to the forces of negation.
Cheryl Corley, NPR News.
The shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security is affecting the country's top disaster response agency. NPR's Rebecca Hersher reports FEMA is part of DHS.
FEMA supports state and local governments when hurricanes, earthquakes, and other disasters happen. With its parent agency shut down, FEMA will still be able to respond to emergencies because there's still a pot of money for immediate disaster response. But places that got hit by wildfires or floods in the last few years and are waiting for FEMA reimbursements may have to wait even longer, FEMA leaders warn. That's because there won't be money to pay all of FEMA's workers. Such delays will not be new, however. Unrelated to this shutdown, the Trump administration has withheld billions of dollars of disaster-related grants for states and is currently moving to cut thousands of jobs at the agency. Rebecca Hersher, NPR News.
The Trump administration has dispatched envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, to Geneva, the site of diplomatic negotiations seeking resolution to multiple global conflicts. One involves the Russia-Ukraine war, which marks 4 years next week. Here's NPR's Greg Myrie.
The Trump administration has met many times with each side separately, and they have reached the point where now the Russians and Ukrainians are at the same table talking to each other, but there's no sense that a deal is close. Trump is still leaning much more heavily on Ukrainians to make concessions, while Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says the Russians aren't serious about peace. Now, in the past, we've seen the Russians and Ukrainians reach some limited agreements on things like prisoner swaps, but no movement toward ending the war.
NPR's Greg Myrie reporting President Trump hosts his new International Board of Peace in Washington, D.C. on Thursday. The focus will be Gaza. U.S. stocks are trading lower this hour. The Dow's down more than 70 points. It's NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Alexandra Hart. President Trump has endorsed former Harris County Judge candidate Alex Mueller over State Representative Briscoe Cain in the Republican primary for the new Texas 9th Congressional District. News 88.7 political reporter Andrew Schneider says the endorsement Monday night comes as the latest University of Houston's hobby school shows Mueller and Cain leading a 9-candidate GOP field.
The survey shows 34% of likely GOP primary voters intend to vote for Miller compared to 26% for Kaine. The two stressed hardline stances on immigration enforcement at a forum last Wednesday in Dayton. Here's Miller.
I'm worrying about the open border and the danger of crime, and I want to make sure we codify President Trump's border policies and actually deliver real results for American families.
Kaine played up his experience in the state legislature.
Congress, we're going to ban sanctuary cities and defund any county or city that's not cooperating with ICE. When I tell you we're going to do it, it's because we did it.
None of the other candidates in the GOP field polled more than 10% of likely primary voters. If none of the candidates wins more than 50% of the vote on March 3rd, the contest will go to a runoff in late May. I'm Andrew Schneider, News 88.7.
To learn more about the Republican primary in the new Texas 9th, tune in to Andrew's feature this afternoon on All Things Considered here on News 88.7. The Texas Democratic Senate candidate James Talarico was set to appear on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert Monday evening. Colbert said CBS executives blocked him from airing the interview. The comedian said his network cited the federal government's requirement of giving equal time to political candidates, though the rule does not apply to talk shows. Colbert did release his interview on YouTube. Here's Talarico.
This is the party that ran against cancel culture, and now they're trying to control what we watch, what we say, what we read. And this is the most dangerous kind of cancel culture.
Representatives from CBS and the Federal Communications Commission did not return a request for comment. It's 74 degrees right now on the UH campus. Tonight's low around 63. I'm Alexandra Hart, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Capital One, offering their premium travel card, Venture X. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. Details at CapitalOne.com. And listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
Live from Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now, Hello Houston with Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
And
Happy Mardi Gras.
Happy Mardi Gras. Good. Like lift us up and first day of early voting.
And Happy Lunar New Year.
Oh yes.
I wore red.
You wore. Oh, is that why you're wearing red? I wore all
Yes.
black again.
Yes, because I thought it was just so interesting. And today is February 17th, 2026. We want to thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston.
Wow.
On
17th
this
already.
Lunar New Year.
17th. We are flying through. We are a month and a half into the year.
Yeah, thank you for that. But I also hear it's cloudy outside. What's going on, Frank?
Oh, you know, that's sort of normal. We got a little bit of Gulf moisture in here, but we're not looking for any rain.
Okay, good.
I think maybe on Tuesday when Friday when a front comes through, we'll have a better chance of some rain then. But nah, just a few clouds.
Yeah. Our first hour seemed a little heavy, a little cloudy. In that first hour, a lot to talk about, from the Nancy Guthrie case into colorectal cancer. Wasn't the most fun, but an important hour, I think.
Yeah, it's that information that you don't necessarily want to have to talk about, but you need to talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah. And, you know, something that a lot of people are talking about is Talarico making national news.
Yeah, this isn't in our headlines for today. We're planning to talk about it tomorrow with a little more depth for it. But as I'm sure you've heard by now, Stephen Colbert is reporting that the CBS lawyers blocked him from airing his interview with, as we said, James Talarico, the Democratic state representative who's hoping to get the Texas U.S. Senate seat. They were citing it's over FCC equal time rules. And since we're short on time today, we'll talk more about it tomorrow. But I did want to point out, James Talarico did do an interview with us, and it's on YouTube. So if you feel cheated out of an interview with James Talarico, you can go and watch ours. Just look on for Hello Houston, James Talarico, and you'll find that full interview.
Yep. That's right. And as we head into the March primaries, you actually had a conversation with Jasmine Crockett as well.
Yeah, she was then on Friday's show, too. So we have that out there also. You can check both of them out. So you can be an educated voter because, as we mentioned, early voting has begun.
It's upon us.
Everyone here knows voting's like Christmas for me. I love it when there's an election going on.
Seems like there's a lot of them lately.
Yes, because this is early voting. Then the actual primary vote is March 3rd. Then at the end of May will be the runoff election for all of them that didn't get it. And then in November, we will have the actual election. And we also were talking voting with oh my God, Teneshia Hudspeth. My mind went blank for a minute there. Talking about how a lot of us are in different districts now because of the redistricting. So check that and make sure you know
It'll be a surprise when you get to
who you're voting for.
And I do want to make a mention. We have also reached out ahead of the primaries to all of the Republican candidates. That is Wesley Hunt for
the top
Republican candidates. Wesley Hunt, Ken Paxton, and John Cornyn.
Inviting them to come be in our forum.
Yes, yes. So I've personally been reaching out and in conversation with them.
Yeah. Well, all of that said, let's get into the headlines.
Civil rights leader Jesse Jackson has died at the age of 84. A protege of Martin Luther King Jr., Jackson helped reshape Democratic politics with 2 presidential campaigns in the 1980s. He was also known for his international advocacy, helping secure the release of American hostages abroad, and for hosting CNN's Both Sides with Jesse Jackson. Jackson received the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2000. His family says public memorial ceremonies will be held in Chicago. And here is a clip of his Keep Hope Alive speech.
You must not surrender. You may or may not get there, but just know that you are qualified and you hold on and hold out. We must never surrender. America will get better and better. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. On tomorrow night and beyond. Keep hope alive. I love you very much.
What impact do you think Jesse Jackson's legacy has on today's civil rights movement? And how do you remember Jackson's impact on civil rights and politics? Now is the time to join us on Hello Houston, 713-440-8870.
He was certainly one of the cogs in the wheel that helped push Obama into the presidency, for instance. He helped to normalize black people running for high office.
He ran 2 presidential races for presidency. And it's funny when you think about it, for me, for some reason, Jesse Jackson's presidential run seems so far away. And then Obama, it was less than 20 years between one to the next. And it just puts in perspective, all of these things build on each other. And he was also, which I find it surprising, his age, because he was also there with Martin Luther King.
Sure.
And so he really did bridge that 60s civil rights movement with the advances made in today's society.
Well, and because of being there with Martin Luther King, I think he became a little bit of a divisive figure within his own people, because they saw him as a young whippersnapper. You know,
he was only 24. I believe,
and young and trying too soon to be too much.
But, you know, when you
look, he was successful at being too much. I thought he did a great job.
And when you look at somebody like Jesse Jackson and you see his career and his legacy, and we can discuss it, it also puts in perspective, to me at least, Martin Luther King and how young he was, and how his legacy was cut so short, and the impact, though, he made during that time. It really does, because I think for a lot of young people, we open the books and we hear about Martin Luther King, and that seems like such a far distant time in our history. And then you look at somebody like Jesse Jackson, who was so pivotal within the last 2-3 decades and beyond. And then you say, wow, I mean, Martin Luther King and what was happening when they were, walking and protesting and those messages were not that long ago.
No.
My favorite little story about that, nothing to do with Jesse Jackson right here, but when you think about how close we are to history, we all know the ABC News correspondent Sam Donaldson. And this is my favorite piece of trivia. Who was the president of the United States when Sam Donaldson's father was born?
Oh, Lord.
Oh my gosh.
Abraham Lincoln.
Oh, my goodness.
Is that not insane?
Why?
And Sam Donaldson, his father was born during Abraham Lincoln's administration. So all of this ancient history that's so far away from us, our generations are so close. And Jesse Jackson made such an impact in his time. And of course, he stepped up on top of the shoulders of giants before him, and that there were those that stepped on his shoulders to become the leaders today. but it takes each step in that path.
And you also have to look at, when we see somebody like this who's passed and we start looking at their legacy, who are going to be the leaders that are going to be the Jesse Jacksons of our time?
Right.
When we look, whenever, I'm one day a little old lady, and who are my kids going to be talking about and seeing at this moment, in this moment right now, there are people and there are Black voices that are still sending the same message and still working for, equitable and equality within our society.
Yeah.
There's a nice email we got.
Mm-hmm.
I heard now in the car you're doing a tribute to Reverend Jackson. I wanted to send this email to say thank you for doing that. I now live in Houston, where I'm the artistic director of Stages Theater.
Yes.
A number of years ago, I was a national co-chair here for the 93 March in Washington for a lesbian, gay, and bi equal rights and liberation. I had the pleasure of introducing Reverend Jackson, who was an early and very outspoken supporter of LGBT rights.
Yeah. I remember when, because one of his big organizations was the Rainbow Coalition.
Yeah, we kind of stole the rainbow from
and
him,
then
didn't we?
the gay movement had the rainbow flag, and there was a lot of confusion about what? They were different organizations, but they all believed in the same thing, which was equality and moving that fight forward.
Inclusiveness. It was all about inclusiveness. That email was from Derek Livingston, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Derek,
Thank you,
give us a
Derek.
call if you want to call in and share your feelings. We're inviting all of you. Call in if you have a memory or an impact that Jesse Jackson and his legacy had on maybe your life and the choices you made and the things that you found made available to you because of the work he did. Very important figure. I was in Chicago before I moved here 1,000 years ago, and Jesse Jackson was very, very present in Chicago. That's where his base was and where they worked out of.
Well, I think the world was a better place because of him.
Oh, definitely. And, like you said, in all of these figures that we talk about, they are human beings, and there's good and bad within all of them.
And I guarantee you will hear people come out and say things, and there's always going to be that element. Right. But the fact of the matter is, if you had somebody who was able to do good,
look at the work they did and the advancement they made and the movement they made forward. Yeah.
Again, 713-440-8870. You're listening to Hello Houston on News 88.7, and you are welcome to join the conversation.
Okay, I got one for you. Ready? Yeah. We already mentioned his name once today. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton has opened an investigation into 3 major school districts: Northeast ISD in San Antonio, Dallas ISD, and Manor ISD, over recent student walkouts protesting federal immigration enforcement. Paxton's filing alleged the districts failed to keep students safe, prevent classroom disruptions, and may have even facilitated the protests. And he's demanding records on attendance, security policies, and internal communications. The move, which follows a similar probe into Austin ISD, comes amid widespread student demonstrations in Texas against immigration enforcement actions. So what are your thoughts on Paxton coming after these ISDs? Give us a call, 713-440-8870.
But before we get to Paxton, we do have a call about Jackson. So Derek from the 3rd Ward is joining us now. Derek, welcome to Hello Houston.
Hi, you just actually implored me to call.
Yes, Derek Livingston. Hello there, sir.
Email. Hi.
Thank you.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Yeah, I guess we'll start off with your memories of Reverend Jackson and interacting with him.
Well, I grew up in the African American community in Sacramento, California, so there was never a time in which I was not aware of Reverend Jackson and his influence and his outspokenness. I was born shortly after Martin Luther King was assassinated, and he was one of the people who sort of emerged from the death of Dr. King. And I remember being very clearly when he announced he was running for president in '84, and that seemed like a pipe dream and so far removed, especially for me and that young African-American man. And I remember his electrifying speech at the '84 convention in San Francisco, and I lived in Sacramento, which is only 90 miles away, so it felt very present and very close. And in that special Southern preacher role and cadence that he mastered so well, quoting from the Statue of Liberty to finish his speech, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free," as it's testament of what this country really should be. And it seems that we need to be reminded of that today. And then in the '88 convention, when he talked about America being a great quilt and some people not being part of the quilt, which I think clearly had come to him because the year before at the 87 Gay Rights March, the AIDS quilt was first unveiled, and was a very impactful moment. And so him making those connections between communities and ideas and iconography. And, you know, my favorite moment of Reverend Jackson, though, one of my favorite moments is when Dr. Seuss died. And he went on Saturday Night Live and he read Green Eggs and Ham again in that Southern rolling preacher cadence. I am, Sam, I am. And only... And not at all commenting on his style, but knowing that his style made that a special reverential acknowledgement to Dr. Seuss's influence.
Yeah. You mentioned in the email that you sent us that you had the pleasure of introducing Reverend Jackson. Tell me a little bit about what that experience was like.
You know, I was 24 years old and at the head of the largest gay rights march in history, so it was all very heady and very exciting. And Reverend Jackson said that he wanted to speak, so we were very excited about that because he was a national figure and a very important civil rights figure. And I, as part of my duties, I was one of the producers of the kickoff stage, and I turned to my co-producer, who was not a national co-chair of the whole event, as I was, to see if he wanted to introduce Reverend Jackson, and he said, no, I think you should do it.
Wow.
And he had I remember you see it in the picture, he has a sling on. He had sprained a shoulder or his arm or something, and he still showed up to speak. You know, for me, as somebody who, you know, before I could vote, had been very moved and influenced by him, it was one of those great moments of my life. And someone took, obviously the day was covered very heavily by the press, and someone sent me photos of me introducing Jackson, which I then took 3 of those pictures and created a triptych, and that was the last gift my grandmother got, was me introducing Jackson at that rally. But it was one of those amazing moments that you look back on your ability to have done something tremendous in your life, and that is, you know, one of the zeniths in it, was to stand next to this man who had been so important and so influential, and who spoke so much about what this country could be for everyone.
Yeah.
And at an event like that, so it was a very moving and very important moment in my life.
Derek, as we let you go today, what do you want people to remember about the Reverend Jackson on this day?
I want them to remember that he really did believe in a country that could be equal for everyone, regardless of race, regardless of gender, regardless of sexual orientation, regardless of wealth. And he spoke about that, and he believed in it, was carried in his heart.
Wow.
Derek Livingston, thank you for calling in and sharing with us today.
And we did.
For doing this.
Yes, thank you, Derek. And we do have a photo of Derek Livingston with Reverend Jackson during that 1983 march there, which is incredible to actually see. And again, 713-440-8870. Let's go to James from Conroe. James, welcome to Hello Houston.
Yes. Hi there. So I have a memory when Reverend Jackson was running for president. He made a campaign stop. His plane had just landed in Houston, and he came to the University of Houston to talk. And there was a pretty big crowd there, and I was part of the crowd. And Casey Kasem was his MC there that introduced him and was campaigning with him. And then, this is something they don't do anymore, I stood right by the campaign bus door, and Reverend Jackson walked right past me and got on the bus. And that's something that just doesn't happen anymore, you know, because of security. So, and then my final comment is, I did vote for him, but I got a lot of hate for it. A lot of hate and a lot of blowback. I don't think it's that way anymore, but back then he was a controversial figure, and if you voted for him, you were in that toxic bubble some people had. So anyway, that's my comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's funny. You forget the environment in which things happen. We all too easily put things as things are today.
Yeah.
But back when he was running for president, it was groundbreaking and earth-shattering. And there was a lot of anger and resistance towards it.
Let's sneak in one last call. Patrick from Southeast Houston. Hi, Patrick. What's up?
Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon. One of the things I want to bring out was Jesse gave the eulogy for former Congressman Mickey Leland at Texas Southern University. And it was a very, very powerful and moving eulogy in which he compared Mickey as being one of those flowers pulled up and taken away and put on the cart when, a lot of weeds were being taken away from, the gardener that was out there. So if anyone really wants to see the power of his oratory, and that's that eulogy for Mickey Leland at Texas Southern University. It was very moving for me.
Nice.
Thank you, Patrick, for sharing that. We also did receive a text. Jesse Jackson's legacy is often captured in his iconic refrain, "Keep hope alive. I was born in a slum, but the slum wasn't born in me."
Great quote.
Coming up on Hello Houston, we'll talk with the Honorable Vanessa Gilmore, a former district judge of the U.S. District Court for the Southern District, about her incredible career, and she'll also weigh in on some of today's legal issues. This is News 88.7. Stay with us.
We know you value Houston Public Media. That's why you're watching right now. So take the next step and become a new member of the station you rely on. Every gift makes a difference. And what matters most right now is supporting the station that brings you the news and information you rely on. It only takes a minute to make a big difference. So join as a new member today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 800-364-8300.
8 o'clock.
This week in This American Life. When Jennifer was 3, she lived in an all-black neighborhood in Milwaukee. One day she was riding her tricycle and saw an older white couple sitting on a bench.
Because I had never seen white people, I assumed that they were ghosts. So I waved, and I remember hearing... I thought, wow, that must be the way they talk.
Kid Logic, true stories, this week on This American Life.
It's on tomorrow night at 9 p.m.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Texas Mutual Insurance Company, a workers' compensation provider committed to handling claims to help injured workers get back to work. More at texasmutual.com/mutual care.
Tonight on Houston Public Media TV8, the new 4-part series Black and Jewish America traces the rich, complex relationship that was drawn together by racism and anti-Semitism. Tonight at 8 on TV8.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from attorney mediator Ron Bankston, providing in-person, video conference, and hybrid mediation and arbitration services. More information is available at ronbankston.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Today we are joined by the Honorable Vanessa Gilmore, a former district judge of the U.S. District Court for the Southern District. She was appointed to the position by former President Bill Clinton in 1994 and served until her retirement in 2022. At the time of her appointment, she was the youngest sitting federal judge in the country. Before her judgeship, she was a civil litigator for 13 years at Vickery Kilbride, Gilmore and Vickery, and was the first University of Houston Law Center graduate to serve on the federal bench. Today, we highlight her story as a VIH, very important Houstonian. Judge Gilmore, welcome to Hello Houston.
Well, thank you very much.
And if you have a question or would like to join the conversation, you can call or text 713-440-8870.
We were just talking about the Reverend Jesse Jackson, and I'm curious if you have recollections and want to share your thoughts on this.
I do, and I think that is a great loss. It really feels very much like the end of an era. Mm-hmm. I saw him about 2 years ago when I was in Washington at an event being sponsored by the 100 Black Men of Washington, D.C. And he was moving a little bit more slowly, but he still had his same pep and vigor that he always had. And he was a remarkable person that I think did a lot for this country in terms of the advancement of civil rights, and worked hard at it as long as he could, and I think he's going to be greatly missed. He had a lot of good friends here in Houston.
Do you see anybody out there that's picking up the mantle, maybe even as we speak?
You know, I wish I could say yes, but I'm not sure that I see anybody who has the same sort of platform and background that he had, marching with Dr. King, working on civil rights from the very, very beginning until now. Here in Houston, of course, the Reverend Bill Lawson was the person that I think was the closest to being the same kind of person that he was, a person that was truly for the community. I hope that there will be someone who can step into those shoes, but they are big shoes to fill.
Well, the heroism is hard to find, just because of the circumstances of their day.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. They came in a time that was extremely challenging, and they answered the call.
Yeah.
And we do have a photo of Judge Gilmore with Reverend Jackson on our YouTube. If you'd like to head there at youtube.com, you can see that.
Yeah. Nice. You mentioned when you were talking a moment ago about the end of an era, and it's as though you don't find a replacement, that we're in a different time now, but that he moved us to this new time we're in. And so we're looking at new leaders and a different approach because he took care of that time for us.
He really did.
But laid the groundwork for like a Barack Obama to be president. If there hadn't been a Jesse Jackson, there couldn't have been a Barack Obama.
And there probably wouldn't have been a Vanessa Gilmore sitting on the United States District Court in Houston. He really opened the door for me as well.
Yeah.
It seems like it takes about 20 years for America broadly to catch up, from the 60s civil rights to then Jesse Jackson being considered seriously as president. Then another 20 years goes by to Barack Obama. The same with women running. I think by the 2030s, America will be ready for a female president.
Well, there's always hope, but I don't know that I see that quite yet.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. I think it takes.
Some would argue we were ready in 2016 when the popular vote came in, but I'm just saying.
But, I do want to discuss your incredible experiences. I mean, you were the youngest federal judge in the country when you were appointed. That's huge. What was that experience like, stepping into such a big role?
Well, getting back to sort of what we've been talking about this morning, I don't think that path would have been possible for me but for Mickey Leland. Mickey Leland was also somebody who took it upon himself to open the door for young people, and he brought together a number of young African-American rising leaders from around the state, not just from Houston, but from Houston, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, and brought us together in a way where he gave us the charge to support each other and to make sure that if opportunities became available, that we would look to each other and give each other those opportunities. And that's really how my path started. As a result of the people that I met through Congressman Leland, one of them became the chief of staff to Ann Richards.
Wow.
And they called me, and after Ann Richards became governor, and invited me to Austin and asked me, the governor asked me to serve on the board of the Texas Department of Commerce, which didn't seem like a real fit for me. I was a trial lawyer, I was a civil litigator.
And that's what I was going to ask. What were you doing in that moment where your name was being brought up?
I was being of service to the community. And that was the thing that brought me to people's attention more than my work as a lawyer.
Yeah.
The fact that at that time, the governor noticed that I had been president of the YWCA of Houston and that I had largely saved that organization. And she said, I saw what you did there. We need some help at the Department of Commerce. You're not the kind of girl who hides your light under a bushel. And I didn't even know what that phrase meant at the time, but it means someone who doesn't hide their talent or abilities. It's from the Sermon on the Mount.
Right.
And I don't hide my talent or abilities. I get out there and try to do work in the community. And I think that was the thing that was the most important in terms of people recognizing that I should be able to work in a job that involves public service. service as a federal judge. And so when I went on the bench, I was just 36 when I was nominated by President Clinton, but that was after I'd served a term as chair of the Department of Commerce. I worked on the NAFTA treaty. I worked on trade issues between the U.S. and Mexico, and brought a lot of businesses to Texas. And those things helped me through the confirmation process. Kay Bailey Hutchinson was treasurer then. If I wanted to bring a business to Texas and get some tax relief, I had to speak with her about it. She sat next to me in my Senate confirmation hearing. A different time, a completely different time. If you can imagine a Republican senator sitting next to somebody who'd been nominated by a Democratic president, but she recognized the work that I had done for the community, and she was very supportive. So it was a very different time in the United States in terms of bipartisanship and people supporting each other.
And that's what I wanted to ask you. You know, what you're talking about is just that political civility that we had. Mm-hmm. Do you think we'll ever be able to get back to that point?
I hope so. But it's so different now than the way that it was then. I mean, sitting on either side of me, I had Jack Brooks, Democratic congressman from Beaumont, you all remember him, and Senator Kay Bailey Hutchinson sitting on the other side of me during my Senate confirmation hearing. I don't think that we'd see a scene like that today.
Well, we were talking about Jesse Jackson, the whole big refrain, keep hope alive, and hope, and it was the positive of things can be better and different. And it seems as though today it seems to be more despair and separation and negativity. And we were talking about who's the next person to carry it, but it's a different time. But in a lot of ways, I guess we do need that voice again to come back.
We do need something to give us some hope. I retired in 2022 after almost 28 years on the bench, and a couple of years ago for Women's History Month in March, a number of the female judges, state district court judges, had a reception for me in which they honored me. And one of the things that they said to me was that they wanted to honor me for leaving the bench when it was time, and making space and room for other people. I'd spent 28 years there. I could have stayed 10 more years if I'd wanted to. Right. Most federal judges die in the position. They say they give you the job for life. Most stay there for life. But I felt that after that amount of time that I had done what I needed to do, and that I had hopefully opened doors to make it possible for other people to follow behind me. And they said, we want to thank you for getting the heck out the way.
I have to ask you, why do you think so many people in these type of roles and positions decide to stay?
They don't have anything else to do. And I do. I have lots of other things to do. And I don't want to wait until I'm too old to start doing them. I'm having so much fun at this stage of my life now that I've retired. Everybody says I'm retired. I'm refired is what I am. I mean, I'm mediating and arbitrating at JAMS. I'm associated with the Roberts Markland Law Firm. I have a tea room appropriately called Tea with Judge V. I am an apiarist now. I'm a beekeeper.
Wow.
I keep bees and make honey for my tea room. I've just got tons of stuff to do. I've got lots to do.
Who were your early, because somebody inspired you, and there must have been a time when you thought, I can't get there, but you heard somebody say you could, and so you did.
Several people, actually. My sixth grade teacher, Mrs. Beatrice Demansky, believe it or not. I mean, it's just one of those things where she just supported me my entire life. And when I was nominated to the bench and I went to D.C. for my Senate confirmation hearing, she said, oh, I knew you would be someplace like this one day. and so it was just really very helpful. Another
you
one,
showed promise in the sixth
grade.
grade.
In the
they
sixth
could
grade,
see it.
Too much to the chagrin, I think, of my siblings sometimes. They're like, oh, God, we got to follow Vanessa. But, it's kind of one of those deals. But then when I was a young lawyer, somebody who just, maybe she doesn't even realize how much she motivated and inspired me, but she was a speech coach. And I was a trial lawyer. I needed to be able to present well in front of complete strangers. And I had a woman who was my speech coach. She called herself a communication specialist. Her name was Margaret Keys, or her name is Margaret Keys. She lives in Austin, Texas. And she helped me quite a lot. And then my law partner, Andy Vickery, was just such a support and the person who just really got my career going. At a time, I graduated from the University of Houston Law Center in 1981. At the time that I graduated, African-American lawyers could not go to large law firms. That it just wasn't even an option.
Wow.
No one was looking for you. No one was asking for you. There was no path to get there. And Andy Vickery taught me at the University of Houston as an adjunct professor and called me at the end of the class and said, "Did you get the highest grade in my class?" I said, "I got the next to the highest." He said, "Oh, I knew you would. Come work for me." And so I went to work for his small boutique civil litigation law firm. And now, as I've gone full circle, finished my time on the bench, we're working on some matters together again. And I'm grateful for that long relationship that we had over the years. So,
And but Judge Gilmore, I would say every job has its hurdles. And what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced? And then what advice would you give to somebody that might be young, or a parent that has a young person that's in law school or trying to get to that place? What type of advice? What did you do to tackle those challenges?
As a young person and as a female judge, there was a lot of pushback against me. And you just have to stand your ground and make sure that people give you the respect that you have earned and that you deserve. And many times I would have lawyers trying to argue with me in court. And I learned something from being a parent late in life from a book called Parenting 1, 2, 3, and it's called The Don't Talk Rule. You don't have to respond to every argument that people make to you. Sometimes it's better just to sit and be quiet and let people sit there screaming at the top of their lungs until they finish.
It's so hard.
It is hard.
You'll put your headphones to your ear. We have a call.
Okay.
And if
See,
you would like
mess
to join,
up my hair.
I know, right? And your hair looks fabulous, by the way. If you'd like to join the conversation, it's 713-440-8870. We're speaking with the Honorable Vanessa Gilmore, a former district judge of the U.S. District Court for the Southern District. And on the line is Shelby from Humble, someone you might know. Shelby, welcome to Hello Houston.
Hi there, Vanessa.
Is it Shelby Moore?
Remember me?
Yes.
When I found out you were going to be on, I said, I've got to call in because you are one of the most wonderful people I ever met, and I loved working with you and Andy.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to hear your voice. Thank you so much.
Well, you said you have a tea room. What's the name of it, and where is it?
It's called Tea with Judge V, and it's on Riverside Drive in North McGregor in a small boutique hotel there. And it's closed right now. It's going to be reopened in about a month. They're doing some renovations now, but please come see me.
I will. Thank you for everything that you've done. You really deserve all the kudos. And I was ecstatic when Bill Clinton put you on the bench. I was like yelling with my other friends because they told me, "Oh, you don't know her." I said, "Yes, I do." Anyway,
absolutely.
God bless you and have a great day.
Thank you,
Shelby. Thank you for calling
so
and
much.
sharing with us. I want to take a slightly different direction and help us understand. There's a lot of people today that are watching what's going on in federal courts and are walking away discouraged, not understanding the process as it should be understood, are being very, have lack in faith in the system. What would you say to those folks?
Well, a couple of things. One, we still have the rule of law, and we are required to follow the rule of law. Everybody doesn't walk away from any case where every single person is happy. Everybody leaves a little bit dissatisfied with the end result. But one of the things that I find the most challenging is the lack of respect for the rule of law right now. In fact, I belong to an organization of retired federal judges called the Article 3 Coalition, and it's a segment of a larger organization called Keep Our Republic. And the purpose of the organization is to promote respect for the rule of law, help people understand the rule of law. We do many public speaking events, workshops. I spoke at Constitution Day in Savannah, Georgia earlier this year to help people understand the role of the judiciary, how the rule of law is supposed to work, the separation of powers, what the constitutional what the requirements are in terms of following the Constitution, because right now we are living in a time where there is less and less respect for the rule of law as people from the very top are not following the lawful orders of judges. And so those of us that are retired and can speak feel that we have an obligation to do so.
it does seem it's frustrating. It does seem like the one court in El Paso said the redistricting was done on racial lines and it can't hold, and then the Supreme Court says, "Oh yeah, it can." I just
don't make me talk about the Supreme Court in public.
But yeah, it used to be a federal decision stood.
Well, yes and no. I mean, district court judges only have jurisdiction where we have jurisdiction, where we are, and then circuit court judges have jurisdiction in all of the states in that particular circuit. But everything can ultimately be appealed to the Supreme Court, and which is why it is important who is appointed to the Supreme Court, because those are lifetime positions, and those people do not leave their jobs to become beekeepers like
some
I did.
Right. Some might even be dead.
We have an interesting question that came through on our YouTube. They want to know what your favorite and most hated Supreme Court decisions have been.
Oh, my gosh. My favorite, Brown versus Board of Education, 1954, that desegregated the school systems. Most hated. Should I pick one in which I was reversed?
Yeah. Yes, you can, actually.
That's a start.
That's interesting.
I don't even want to say most hated. That wouldn't even be fair.
Yeah.
I spent 10 years of my life trying the Enron cases. And I spent 5 months in trial on one of those cases, and it went up and it got reversed because they said that the government had overcharged and had charged them for honest services fraud, which meant that the people had been charged with violating, defrauding Enron of the honest value of their work, which wasn't what it was. I mean, everybody was in it together. And they said it should have just been charged as a straight securities fraud case. And so the original indictment was 220 counts, and the second indictment was 11 counts of just straight securities fraud. Took a couple weeks to try, and then it was over with. And so it was like 5 months of my life that I was never going to get back, and all of those jurors too, from just a situation with the government really just overcharging in that case.
Wow.
Going back to the question that was just asked, though, do you ever lose faith in the system?
I would probably be lying if I didn't say yes, because some of the decisions of the Supreme Court in recent times have given me pause and have made me doubt the integrity of the system. And I know that there are many polls that suggest that people do not have faith in the system because of some of the recent decisions of the Supreme Court. And I would probably, have to count myself among those folks who wonder sometimes what is going on.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay, though, for us to have those feelings?
I think so. I mean, I think that there are valid feelings, and I think that it motivates you to do what you need to do. If you don't like who's on the Supreme Court, you need to know that the president is the one who picks the people that are appointed to the Supreme Court. And I hope that it motivates people to become active members of the political process and to go out and vote for who they think is going to make the best selection the next time that there's an opportunity to appoint somebody.
Yeah. And voting's going on right now.
Voting started today, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
If you can't change the people, change the people.
Change the people. Right.
The Honorable Vanessa Gilmore is a former district judge of the U.S. District Court for the Southern District. Judge Gilmore, thank you so much for joining us today on Hello Houston.
Thank you for having me.
I want to hear more about the bees.
I know. In the tea room.
Why don't you come over and see me?
I will.
It's just a mile or two from here.
Coming up, the musical traditions of Mardi Gras. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
It's not just your car. It's the one that brought your kids home from school, took you cross country, held memories, laughter, even a few breakdowns. When it's time to let go, give your car a new purpose. Donate it and turn memories into meaningful support for this station. Plus, you'll enjoy free and easy pickup, potential tax benefits, and a simple donation process. Your gift supports the programs you and your family love. Donate today and help keep public media strong. Call or donate online.
Your gift to Houston Public Media could go twice or even 3 times as far through your employer's matching gift program. Many companies will match the charitable donations of their employees, and some even match gifts from retirees. That means your support for trusted news and programs could have double the impact for our community. Find out if your company participates at houstonpublicmedia.org/match.
Support comes from Austin College, where class sizes create opportunities for students to engage deeply, experience collaborative learning, and discover the skills needed for life after graduation. Located in Sherman, Texas. More at austincollege.edu.
Support comes from Metro, introducing the Ride Metro Fare Card. The Ride Metro Fare system replaces the Metro Q Fare Card for bus and rail fares. Details at ridemetro.org/fare system.
Support comes from the Houston Symphony, with a concert performance of Act 2 from Wagner's Tristan and Isolde, featuring Tamara Wilson, Stuart Skelton, and Jamie Barton at Jones Hall, February 28th and March 1st. Tickets at houstonsymphony.org. Support comes from the in-print Cool Brains series, presenting Meg Medina, recipient of the Newbery Medal, with her new middle-grade novel, Graciela in the Abyss. Sunday, March 1st, 3 p.m. at Meyerland Middle School. More at inprint.org.
And now back to Hello Houston on this Fat Tuesday. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870. And now, Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Today is Fat Tuesday, as you just heard, which means it's the end of the carnival season and the final day for feasting before the start of Lent, a season of fasting. Across the greater Houston area and Galveston tonight, Houstonians can find many ways to celebrate Mardi Gras, including at Doc's Houston, which will host their own Mardi Gras celebration featuring the Jazz Club's artistic director, Graeme Francis, and Houston vocalist Nicoya Baker, performing live jazz music. Both are with us now to discuss the musical traditions of Mardi Gras. Welcome.
Happy Mardi Gras.
Mardi Gras, y'all.
You know, when we talk about jazz, we tend to use a very broad stroke, but there really are different types of jazz. I mean, and the tone, I think one of the earlier ones coming out of New Orleans was Dixieland jazz, and then there's also big band, smooth jazz. Can you explain the type of jazz when we talk about Mardi Gras that we're actually hearing?
I think we're celebrating really the roots of jazz. Of course, jazz was born in New Orleans and comes out of that great melting pot of, the West African slaves, their music coming to the New World, and European influences as well. And you mush that all together, and eventually you get jazz. But it took 100 years, right?
Right.
And I think when we start to think of traditional jazz, and sometimes it's referred to as Dixieland or whatever, but basically, we're talking about music that comes from New Orleans, and a lot of that's going to emphasize that incredible marching band tradition, which is, of course, the popular music in the late 1800s. But if you add the emphasis on improvisation and the dance ability that you get from West African music, then you really get something special. And so that's where you get your parade music and your second line music and all the brass band music that we associate with Mardi Gras, especially in New Orleans. So that's what you can expect. It's very much a live and kind of rowdy and super fun and get your umbrellas in the air kind of a bash.
So not to go totally off, but then what is Zydeco?
Zydeco, I think, emphasizes it's a small group music. First of all, it's much less likely to be outside, and I would call it, I'm stretching here, but maybe I'm right at saying that it's more of a folk music. That's maybe more at home in the kitchen.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You've got your squeeze box and maybe a fiddle and a guitar,
washboard,
and washboard. Exactly.
It's
less,
spoons,
exactly. Whatever you got around the house, kind of a thing.
We talk about Mardi Gras music too, and the jazz of Mardi Gras. That little riff we were playing coming into this segment, you hear it, you know it. It places you right there in time.
Unmistakable.
What's it like to put voice to that music?
So putting voice on top of that is just adding to the amalgamation of what parade and Mardi Gras music is. It's a different expression of that because you actually have words that you can communicate to people. There's actually a song that we're going to play tonight that's a traditional Mardi Gras tune called Iko Iko. And the writer of that song is actually a New Orleans native. His name was Sugar Boy. And his band was called the Cane Cutters, which is it's a reflection of the ubiquity of just sugar cane all over Louisiana. And he was at a parade and heard what is like these Mardi Gras Indians chanting, war chants, victory chants. He went home, jotted down the words, and then wrote this song, which we all know today is like this famous tune. And that just speaks to what putting words on top of that can kind of communicate to people and how it can kind of bring people into, what is the celebration of Mardi Gras.
It's funny, though, also, and this probably speaks to just the power of music in general. Back to that little riff we heard. As soon as you hear that, it does something, I would say, physical to your being. There's an
100%.
excitement that suddenly builds. Your heart goes a little faster. You start to feel it moving. How do you translate that into science of what's actually happening when we hear something that reacts physically with us that way?
Well, I mean, you're right. I think music has the power to do that anyway. It's like maybe what makes us human in a way that, the birds and the bees don't have Mardi Gras the same way we do, right? But yeah, I think music has that power to move us physically, and I think if it's music that is born out of a really physical experience, like a dance expression in Congo Square, if you're going back 200 and some years, or you're talking about a parade, there's an inherent physicality to it, and it's built to move your feet in a specific way. And I think any music that's developed organically over that long, that has at its underpinning getting people out and getting people moving, which is what jazz has always done. It's been a music for dancing for 100 years.
So, it sounds fabulous.
That's
Is it just tonight? Is it a one and done?
Not necessarily. Which is to say no.
Well, tonight at Doc's, it is. But Mardi Gras is this whole season-long thing, especially for people in Louisiana. And it's a celebration that's included like in the liturgical calendar.
Right.
You have Christmas season, then you have King Cake Day, Epiphany Day, which is the start of Mardi Gras and eating king cake every day for
so your teeth fall out.
Nicoya, where are you from?
I was born and raised in Houston, but my family is from a small town in Louisiana called New Roads. It's in between Opelousas and Baton Rouge, so I'm 100% Cajun, but I'm a Houston. I'm a Houston
when
Texan.
did you start performing with jazz like this?
Man, it's probably a couple decades. I guess I'm telling my age at this point, but but I grew up listening to jazz in my home. I actually have a great uncle from New Orleans. His name was Joe Joseph, but he was called Pleasant Joe. He was a jazz pianist and singer, and he actually has an autobiography that was written about him where he talks about stories of all these famous jazz musicians who came through New Orleans and played music with him. So music has always been a part of my life, and I've been performing jazz for quite a long time.
Graeme, talk to me a little bit about bringing this here to Houston, bringing this environment, this feeling to us so that we can celebrate on Fat Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big circular story here, and I'll make this as brief as I can. But when I started working with Doc Watkins 20-some years ago, one of the characters that we had in our band on a regular basis was this incredible guy called Pierre Pourry, and he was from New Orleans, and like a lot of people moved to, in his case, San Antonio after Katrina, and he infused our band, which up to that point did a lot of standards and some original stuff, with this New Orleans thing that became inescapable. And so my experience with New Orleans music comes directly from him and working in Doc's band. So the chance to celebrate that here in Doc's new club, named after him, doing a lot of the music that I was first exposed to and sort of learned by osmosis by working with Pierre, is super cool. Now, obviously, Houston's not far from Louisiana, so it's also just around the road, and we've got a lot of folks that come over here to hang out and vice versa, and there's a lot of New Orleans expats that ended up here over the years, and so the community is already here.
There's a huge intersection.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And even if you're not, even if you're a guy from Canada, like this music, like you said earlier,
right.
it's
it
music
just hits you. I think it's cellular. I don't think it's
maybe it is.
Yeah.
It's just it's in our bones. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And Doc's is a great place to hear it.
It is.
I remember when you guys first opened. And so I'm guessing it's been a wild success.
It's been really, really great. And one of the really strong shows is what we're going to do tonight. I mean, we'll be doing this show for years and years and years. We've already done a version of it 4 times now, and it always packs the place because everybody loves this music. And by the end of it, everybody's on their feet.
You
the
can't
beads
pack
are going.
it too much because people want to move to this.
Well,
music.
This is it. And the first time we did the second line around, we were like, man, are we really going to be able to get 200 people walking around? And sure enough, we did. And eventually, nobody sits back down anyway. It's kind of the big closer on the show. It's a great way to send everybody home.
Yes. Nicoya, you want to sing a little tune?
Oh, sure.
Well, you got like 10 seconds.
Okay.
I'll play on the board here.
Yeah.
If you can hear it.
Yeah, you ready?
Get after it. Yeah.
You ready? You got it? My grandma and your grandma sitting by the fire. My grandma told your grandma, I'm gonna set your flag on fire. Talking about hey now, hey now,
hey now.
I go ande. Jacques Morfina nanane, Jacques Morfina
Hey, Graeme Francis is a drummer, artistic director at Docs. Nicoya Baker is a Houston-based vocalist. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, everybody.
And we really have run out of time on our show. We want to thank you for watching and listening to Hello Houston. We'll be back tomorrow with more conversations. Have a great day. This is News 88.7.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menjivar, Jen Altide, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at HoustonPublicMedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Houston Public Media is licensed to the University of Houston System, governed by the UH Board of Regents. Information about open meetings, dates,